Hi guys, I'm Greg.
And I'm John.
So today we're going to continue our, we haven't really done one of these in a while. We call them How It Could Work. We decided today that we should just change this segment title to fan fiction.
Yeah, Greg and John's fan fiction.
It essentially is just fan fiction,
Yeah.
you know? It's not a commentary. It's us coming up with silly ideas that can be kind of cool at the same
These
time.
are just things that we think could work.
Yeah, that we think could work and be our little fan fiction stories.
And instead of just talking about them with each other, we'll talk about them with you.
We'll share them with you guys. I put out like what should be the next one that we try to do. We did Unbreakable 2, which people really liked.
We did Friday the 13th.
Not Split 2, but just Unbreakable.
Just Unbreakable.
Friday the 13th. We did Shanghai Dawn.
Yeah.
And we just asked like what should be the next one. And looking through a few of the requests, we're going with John Wick Chapter 3 today.
Chapter 3.
Alright, this one ain't gonna be anywhere near as long as our other ones. We decided we gotta shorten these two because they kept getting so long and was so detailed as if we were actually writing the script.
The second, that Unbreakable one was like as long as an actual movie.
So, if you remember how John Wick Chapter 2 ends, contract is out on John Wick from the whole world. International contract. He is the #1 target for the high table. It ends with him in New York and he's like, I'm gonna kill them all. And then he starts running with his doggy. Bam. Here's where we pick up our story. Aurelio, John Leguizamo's character, right?
Yeah.
Starts off nighttime. He's closing up shop. One thing we want to say too is that we wanted to kind of go back like a little hybrid of 1 and 2 between taking its time to build up to some action.
Yeah.
And then going kind of rock and roll with the action as well.
Yeah, because John Wick 2 just starts off with this like explosion of car chase crashing and stuff like that. So yeah, we wanted to go back to like okay, let's pull in on the intrigue first and then
yes, exactly. You know. Aurelio, John Leguizamo's character, as in the last couple films, he has his car shop and he's closing up shop till he receives an unexpected visitor. You know, we're closed. It's John Wick who's there. We imagine a kind of dialogue where John could just be like, hey. And Aurelio pauses for a while, then goes, right. Because Aurelio, they show in the montage of part 2 that he got one of the notifications about John Wick being a contract. So Aurelio, he agrees to let John stay the night, but you know, John has to stay underground.
He's got to lay low. He can't be real obvious walking around in like a robe that's open where anybody can see him.
You know what it could be? It could be like one of those rooms that's it's the secret on the floor. You have to like pull open the floor, but you can like put John Wick under there, then you could drive a car over it.
Yeah. He's got some kind of little safe house bunker down there.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, because he's into shifty business. Why wouldn't he? John Wick, he's down in his little hidey hole. He's watching TV. There's like a shitty TV, and he's watching the news. And it turns out that oh my god. Someone's gonna John Wick my ass for wearing this bracelet here in the video. John's in his little bunker and he's watching TV that Aurelio gave him. He sees that the incident, you know, basically the incidents from John Wick 2 are being covered on national news. Like, it was a big enough incident that people were able to take notice and be like, some shit went down.
Just think about it. And John Wick Chapter 2, like, I imagine on the news sequences, you're seeing some of, like, footage from the museum or wherever he was. That was a public place he was at, you know?
Yeah. And maybe they have, you know, a blurry image of what he might look like. You know?
Out of the shit ton of people he shot up. And then I imagine they could connect it to footage they got at the subway stations.
Yeah,
so now where he killed people at the subway station.
Yeah, exactly. So now John Wick isn't just wanted by all of the crime syndicates of the world. He's also wanted by the law,
the authorities,
and that's not good. That's not a good position for John Wick to be in. You know, that's the stakes are setting in, and he's realizing what he's got to do.
He has to say goodbye to his dog in like a very emotional scene. We imagine a moment where Aurelio like knows of a family who could use a dog. So I thought, like, you know, especially in this first act where you kind of get to know Aurelio a little bit.
He gives John's dog like his nephew or something.
So we imagine that with John Wick losing everything, you know, his wife, his home, now he's the #1 target in the world. There's this moment where you imagine where he's like laying awake at night and he's seriously contemplating suicide. Because why wouldn't a guy like this at this point think about that for
at a certain point, yeah, if you really want peace and you're not going to get any peace, it doesn't seem like there's anywhere else to go.
Yeah.
For John Wick. And it seems like a reasonable
So I feel like it's a question that would be cool for him to at least ask himself at one point. Like, should I just do it? What do I really have to live for? I can't even take care of my dog now, you know?
Yeah, I gotta give up. I have to give up my roots in life,
Exactly. You know? He's rejoined by Aurelio, because Aurelio dropped off his dog. Gave his dog away.
And it's here we really get to see, the bond that these guys share. Like, we wanted to bring that back into this, too, is like, bring a little bit, think, who's John Wick's last friend in the world, and kind of take advantage of that. This is John's only friend. He's lost everything else. We take this as an opportunity to bring it back up. His wife, his home, his dog. The whole world seems to want him dead.
So with John feeling bleak, everything's just getting bleak, he wonders to himself, like, is this the best possible option? Should he just kill himself? Should Aurelio dispose of him and, rob everyone of all the satisfaction? Like John Wick's one final fuck you to the world, or PewDiePie, fuck you to the world. I'm not saying fuck you, PewDiePie, I'm just doing what the PewDiePie thing was. One final fuck you to the world that just couldn't let him live his life. So they have this big talk.
The big talk that Aurelio would have with him. The sort of like, what the fuck were you thinking, dude? Like, you could have just killed him as soon as you got out on the Continental Steps or something like that. Like, D'Antonio's a punk. Why'd you do that?
Yeah, but, there's no way he would have left that building with me still capable of killing him.
And then Aurelio says something cool, like, that's a cold fuck you, Jack. And then John Wick says something even cooler, like, excommunicado. Like, with a little bit of a chuckle, because, like, probably felt like a badass killing a dude in the Continental.
So they drink to that, get some sleep, Wick, I ain't your landlord. And the next morning, though, Aurelio receives a visit from, like, a couple of shady characters who are most likely assassins. You know how that goes.
Would be shady.
And they're out looking for Wick. They know Aurelio and Wick sometimes stayed in touch, but Aurelio's poker face is good. The guys leave for now, But, of course, Aurelio's in a mode like, John has to leave.
Yeah,
he has to leave.
This is the hot zone. And in the light of a new day, John Wick has decided that he's not going to kill himself. He knows he can only run so far, though, and so Wick tells Aurelio that the only way for him to clear his name is basically directly through the High Table, which is, if you remember John Wick 2, is the bigger crime organization of the world.
But John believes he knows someone outside of the country who might be able to help clear his name, might be able to help out with just getting the contract out off of his head. But in order to do that, how the fuck can John Wick leave the country when everyone in New York City wants him dead? He has to clear a path out of New York, so it's gonna be fucking difficult.
So Aurelio basically sends John on his way with a few helpful supplies, like a couple weapons, an inconspicuous car, something for at least John to have, some legs to stand on as he gets out of here. So as not to have him looking like the shots that are all over TV, we came up with a kind of humorous segment where Aurelio calls his like incredibly trustworthy crime barber, you know, who just comes to like give John sort of a badass makeover of sorts, and it's just like they've got a guy for every. It was like basically to continue the gag that like everybody in this world has a guy for there's a specialized clandestine job,
very specific tasks. But before John leaves, John asks Aurelio to give the Continental a message. So here's where we're about to get into like the big Act 2 shit, guys. This is where we're gun and blazes are around the corner.
Now,
you hear that? You hear that? That's a gunshot.
I hear a lot of people loading in clips and magazines, cocking things, checking shafts are straight.
Aurelio travels to the Continental and he requests a meeting with the manager, Winston, who's played obviously by Ian McShaney.
Yeah, we thought this would be a cool chance to get two change the focus, get two beloved side characters in the room together.
Yeah, it's the first time, because in the other movies they don't talk with each other, so it's the first time we see Aurelio and Winston speaking together. And it's here where we learn John Wick's message. What he does is he gives the name and address of a specific building in New York City with only a few words. I've decided to live another day. To whom it may concern regarding my bounty. Let's make this fair for all parties. He leaves a sweet address. I'll be waiting. So he uses very specific messages to where he's gonna be, just telling the Continental, like, put out where I'm gonna be. And he's letting everyone know.
We can end this. And Winston is clearly not excited about this information. This is a painful situation for him, but he runs the message anyway. And he also reminds Aurelio that he could take serious action for helping John Wick out at all. Like, basically, he gives him kind of a verbal smack just to be like, remember who's the boss around here. But they understand one another, and with mutual respect, the two part ways.
So then you get like your montage intercut of super tight shots of weapons being prepared and cleaned, you know, building up the action for how John's getting prepared to fight at this building.
And then seeing it cut with like assassins, you know, like making their way, you know, getting the message, like moving out.
I don't want to see something in there too, like in the montage where John's like in the building, but this building. It's this super public place. It's like this big fucking mall. It's multiple levels. There's multiple floors. Yeah. There's lots of shits in the way. You know, trees, fountains, water slide, families. Slowly but surely, though, the assassins start to arrive. Each focus in on finding Wick. But in this montage, and before everyone starts arriving at this mall, I thought it'd be cool if you see Wick like looking around and secretly like planning a weapon or something, you know? Like on different parts throughout the mall.
And so we imagine like one little vignette moment where like some dude sits down like looking all shifty over a newspaper, you know, clearly up to something, looking for John Wick, and then all of a sudden, blam, you know, the dude falls over, silencer style, where it's like, it's a shock to us, but it's quiet to the rest of the world. Blood hits the newspaper, and no one like really notices yet. And then a couple more, like we cut to a wide shot, you know, see a couple more get taken out before the crowd notices, and then all hell breaks loose. An even wider shot where you see basically all the regular people like panicking to get out, and like all the assassins moving like sharks, just trying to find John Wick. Just really impossible looking situation.
So it's this public place. Mall's beginning to clear. When everyone clears, what we can see are the assassins, but we don't see where Wick is.
Yeah, like they all gotta be discreet. Like they're probably not unaccustomed to public places, but they all have to be discreet, and that's not gonna happen today.
And now they're all like kind of working together now. They're trying to take out John Wick. This ain't an every man for himself scenario now.
Yeah, and then what follows is like basically kind of a long Die Hard style action sequence where like John is kind of climbing to the top of this structure, and they're all pursuing him up it, and he's just taking fools out. You could probably do some cool visual gags involving different stores, or a stairwell, or an elevator, you know?
Like, there could be, like, a fun, cool, like, visual gag where a fight happens in, like, a Victoria's Secret with, like, awesome lighting, and silhouettes and stuff.
Angel wings.
Yeah. You can just take advantage of the fact that you're in a mall where there's multiple kinds of stores. Kind of shoot action scenes a little differently, and maybe sometimes even include, like, weapons around, like, he has to use something from the store to fight at some point or whatever, you know.
Totally.
But it is that Die Hard, the Raid kind of style where it's working its way through multiple floors throughout this whole thing, because there's a lot of assassins there, you know.
So eventually John is able to clear out a good wave of these assassins. It becomes sort of a convergence point. We haven't mapped the full geography of like what a fight like this would be like, but basically he's able to clear a wave enough that he can slip out and go see his friend?
The Bowery King. The Burger King.
The Burger King.
He sits down to get a Whopper.
Extra onions for John Wick.
I kill a lot of people. I like a Whopper. He goes to see the Bowery King, who was played by Lawrence Fishburne, who, after a bemused little reunion, he decides to help John procure safe passage out of the city via boat.
Yeah, so hold up in the cargo bay of some fucking tanker.
Because what we see with the Bowery King is all this guy really does is he works with transportation, you know.
Even though they really can't hang out in this movie. If they could in the first movie, they really can't hang out now. But I think there's a sympathy there for John Wick, and I think he's a little bit outside the system.
Well, and I think John Wick still helped out the Bowery King.
He did.
Because that's what he did, and they didn't have a scene in part 2 where they're like, you did your thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Perfect, see?
Well, you know how John could help out?
How?
Why Bowery King would still agree? Because, you know, Bowery King's not like, all right, you did me one, I'll do you one too. You know? I feel like what John Wick could threaten if anyone tries to kill him, or if he's caught, he'll confess that he did the killing for the Bowery King.
Okay.
That he got help from him. So people will go after the Bowery King. So it's like to keep John's lips, because John has guns on him, and he knows John Wick could probably kill everyone in the room if they try anything.
Yeah.
He's the boogeyman. You can't kill John Wick.
Yeah, everybody clenches really hard when he walks in the room.
So he says, if you don't help me, And if I get caught, I will tell people.
Yeah. He's got leverage,
so
man.
So John gets on the boat.
And that's
He's
kind
on
of
a boat. Then we got a music video of John Wick on a boat.
Just like staring out into the distance and like, looking at things. Yeah.
No, he's held up in like the cargo bay.
Yeah, no one's really supposed to know he's down there. But like, yeah, that's what we're going with. We're gonna let him spend some time.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the midpoint. Like this movie kind of has two distinct halves, and so that's the midpoint of this movie. And now we open back up, and we're in China.
Yeah, we're in China now. And the world, they haven't seen the Wicca Man in months.
So Wicca Man, not the bees.
Not the Wicker, Wicca.
Wicca. Oh.
Not Wigger either, Wicca.
And not Wicca like the religion.
Yeah, not the religion either. World hasn't seen Wick in months. Bounty's not been collected. There are lots of rumors about where is the Wiccanator. So naturally, there are whispers around China because this is an international contract, and apparently the High Table. You know, I imagine part of the High Table's origins could possibly stem somehow in China. And let's just face it,
they've got to have a leg in China.
Good, this movie's never gonna get made, but. Hey, Hollywood, if you did it, you'd be in China, where a lot of your money's coming from now. We follow a man there, though. We follow a different character. We don't know how much time has passed now that we're in China. I thought of a plot way we can reveal that time has passed, though, right? Just hear me out in a sec. So we follow a man they call Lao Chun.
Okay.
And we imagine this Lao Chun guy played none other than Chow Yun-fat! Who else to be cooler in a John? Like, if you're gonna get one of those old school action stars,
is gonna have a love interest. Played by Chow Yun.
Chow Yun-fat, man, he's the dude from Asia who wasn't about the kung fu, but about the bullets, dudes. We follow a man they call Lao Chun on his rounds one night. We're getting a sense for how he does business and the life he lives, because this Lao Chun character is kind of our introduction. More into how how part 2 we see the Rome underworld. This is like the Chinese underworld of the same, High Table universe we have here.
We see what a regular day in the life of Lao Chun is. So, he's in nightclubs, he's fine dining, he's seeing multiple associates, there's the occasional business call, he's gonna whack somebody who had it coming, whatever. We see a day in the life of a guy who's high up in the crime world in China. We follow him all the way until he returns home that night, and when he returns home, someone is already there. That someone is John Wick.
And here's how we can tell time has passed.
Yeah.
His hair has grown back.
Well, his hair's got to be even like his hair's. Yeah, he's probably got really shaggy hair.
Well, yeah, he got the barber thing done, and now his hair is like not fully grown back or something, but it's longer. He's got a beard now.
Yeah. He's looking haggard. He's looking like a guy who's spent a long time in the belly of a
China.
China.
yeah,
to
exactly.
Get to China.
What happens in this scene is we learn. One of the things we love about the John Wick movies is when whenever John Wick bumps into someone and they're like, John?
Yeah. Usually they have some sort of tenuous history based on some exchange from the past.
So we don't have the details exactly as to what their past is.
But we could if we wanted to spend more time on this.
We learn who Lao Chun is. Much has changed about the two since they met. Lao Chun now has he has an organization that runs, sections of the streets in China. And he also is directly connected to the High Table within China, and it turns out that the High Table is, very much aware of the Wicca Man.
Yeah, because he's fucked up all of crime for several months.
Yeah.
Because, that's the thing I also thought about when we were beating this out, is, there's got to be repercussions of, lots of people's hitmen are dying, so lots of contracts are up in the air, and, things. I don't know, it seems like this would cause a ruckus at least. Lao grants Wick his wish, and he arranges for John to meet with a representative or representatives who will take him to the High Table, thus squaring their debt. Because he's got a debt from the past. All these dudes have debts and shit.
Yeah, so John has a debt to John.
Yeah.
John's gonna say, this is it. John meets with the High Table, but it's nothing like you'd expect.
Yeah, he's given a phone.
Yeah, he's given an option of 2 pills.
The red one, he goes down this rabbit hole, right? He learns all sorts of shit he didn't know. And the blue one, he gets a boner.
Yeah, this is just another version of the one. This is the Mr. Anderson of that time. So he's given a phone, and he periodically receives instructions to follow, which lead him to a meeting. One of those situations where, now go here. Now go here. So the closer he gets to meeting the high table in person, the more on edge he becomes, because he starts feeling like this could possibly be an ambush. You know, you could shoot it like maybe it's an ambush.
Yeah. And also you could shoot it in a way that really amplifies what John Wick must be feeling right now, because this is like, he's got to be kind of on edge at this point.
Yeah.
You know, like, this is a big moment.
Like, he definitely can't have a gun on him as he's gonna go do this, you know? Finally, he arrives at the meeting place, which is completely nondescript. Not how you'd expect this to go down, though. John is instructed to sit. Across from him are the figures of several people sitting in relative darkness. A single light ticks on, casting shadows on the seated congregation, and a blinding light on John Wick.
And from what we can tell, I caught that detail, there are 4 seats at the high table, but there are at least 12 people seated across from John Wick.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell which of them is speaking as they address him. I thought it would be cool to have them do kind of like, you know, all these dudes have like a ritual. Let's have a weird little ritual that's like more stripped back than you would think, but it's also kind of very striking. Intense for John Wick.
Yeah. So the high table, they inquire as to why John thinks he is worthy of,
a high pardon.
John states his case. You know, there's many reasons why John Wick's worthy to still be alive. He's killed so many fucking people for the high table, and then these unfortunate situations get thrusted on him. He was betrayed by someone who was important to the high table, and then all this catastrophe happened. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, yeah, you shouldn't kill someone on the Continental, but like, here's what the fuck went down. So, I mean,
he states his case for his life.
And he whines just the way I did. He's just a whiny little...
Guys, it's really unfair, alright?
You know how much worry I've done for you guys?
Do you know how everyone agrees that guy was a dick when he brought my marker back, okay? Like, I had every right.
So here's before we get into Act 3. The high table eventually agrees that if John carries out a task of their choosing, someone of great importance to the high table, they will grant him his pardon on the condition that he remains in exile once the task is finished, just like the Merovingian. Like I said, this is all connected to the Matrix. But here's the catch, though. Here's the catch. John is not given, like, any specific information on, like, background information onto who exactly he has to go after, all he knows is where this target is being.
He has to go on a blind mission. All he knows is a name and how to get there.
There's a target being protected by people, and he has to go find this target, and the most he knows is where they're at.
Yeah.
But he has no idea. All he can put together is that this is obviously an enemy of the high table.
Yeah, this is somebody they don't want around anymore. And the high table, for such a high-profile gig, grants him partner. They say, John, you can take a buddy with you.
This ain't just some regular contract kill. This is this very specific enemy of the high table.
Yeah. And it's also that ceremonial thing of like, hey, John, Lao Chun, you brought this guy in order for us to do what he wants. You're also responsible because you brought this to our attention.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's a very code, like, you guys are going to do this together. Good luck.
The high table, they grant him a partner for the mission. Lao Chun! What? We're gonna see Chow Yun Fat maybe shoot some guns? Hell yeah! Not like when Lawrence Fishburne did nothing.
He's gonna do cool shit like we want him to do.
So I don't know like what exactly where this is, but I imagine something along the lines of they have to infiltrate some type of high security type of warehouse guarded by a large gang of, Asian men. They might be Japanese. They look Japanese. This ain't a racist thing, but it's more like for the white people to watch to go.
Like a plot
they're definitely Asian, but they don't look Chinese. They look Japanese. We'll get to that in a second. They have to take out a bunch of guards to get to the target who's being guarded in one very specific room. So in doing this mission, what do? They kill some badass Japanese motherfuckers. I'm talking like, you get to have some cool, like, different kind of characters in here.
Different kinds of combat.
Like, different kinds of assassin dudes in here who have different weapons. So John Wick takes on someone with a sword.
Well, yeah, and we've made this script pretty heavily like, characters are meeting each other to talk about stuff. So it's like, this seems like a mission where you could also get some pretty cool John Wick meat and potatoes.
Yeah. Like, pretty much, either like shoot.
They incapacitate all the necessary guardsmen.
And then they get to the target, but the target is a little girl, and they did not tell John Wick that it was gonna be a little girl. Now, what have we seen John Wick do? John Wick has killed many men.
John Wick has not only killed men, he has killed women.
He's even killed
a woman.
women. I mean, Ruby.
A crimes woman.
Ruby, and then he, after the woman was dead, he still had no problem shooting that chick in the head. I don't know if he killed Ruby, but it seemed like he was willing to.
Yeah, for sure.
There's nothing that's been established Ruby won't kill women, you know?
John Wick is a very feminist murderer.
Seems like he would do it if he had to. Oh, he killed someone in the subway station, too. That one of the chicks.
But he's not killed a kid.
He's not killed a kid, and he won't kill a fucking child, you know? So Lau decides to do it for him. Lau's like, fine. Pussy. Of course, John, you know, before Lau can pull the trigger, John stops him. They get in a fight. I imagine this could be John Wick style, but like the Equilibrium fight with Christian Bale and the main bad guy, where they're one-on-one, close proximity. They can't shoot each other, but they're really trying to. Yeah, so, oh man, I'm talking. We get some chow yun fat, hard-boiled.
Fat gun foo up in this bitch.
But, of course, John Wick wins, and, you know, he fucks up Lau. He doesn't kill him, but, you know, Lau has that moment where he ain't getting up from the ground. You know, like he's
all right, dude, I got you.
Yeah, like he can't fight. He can't fight anymore. Like Lau's a little older, and he's almost dead.
So John takes the little girl. He finds one of the dudes on the security squad. They just beat the shit out of him. He's not dead yet. Says, sorry, can you maybe get this little girl out of here to someplace
I don't imagine
more
he's
safe?
like that.
No, I don't think
he does a John Wick style. You know.
Of course he does. That was a joke.
Take her someplace safe.
Take her someplace safe and give her a gun. John Wick goes back to Lau. He checks him for weapons and stuff.
Pats
and
the motherfucker down.
Takes his wallet, grabs $5. You know.
So John pats down Lau, checks him for weapons. But then John does the nice thing, and he puts Lau around his arm and picks him up, and he helps walk him.
Yeah, he helps walk him outside. They sit down, they talk. Maybe they share a cigarette together or something. Lau asks, where will you go, John Wick?
And John says, if anyone tries to come after me, I'll kill them all. All of them. The same fucking ending as part 2! No, we're not going to do that.
That's not what we're going to do.
Lau asks, what will you do now, John? John says, go into exile. Lau says, you've disobeyed direct orders from the high table. They won't forgive this. And then John asks, so, are you going to tell me who these people are? Who that girl is? Lau, he chuckles. And John says, I thought so. So then John drives Lau to an Easter egg location. Chinese Continental. But doesn't enter the ground because Lau has to get stitched up. Lau's all fucked up. You know, he needs to get healed. Bam.
He's gonna drop him off at the bellhop's desk, which is probably a real thing at the Continental. This is what they call the guy who comes down with a golden gurney to carry you into the hospital.
So he drives to the Continental. They're right out front of the Continental. I think it'd be cool if they don't even say the Continental, but the audience knows that's the Chinese Continental, you know? Before Lau exits the car, Lau says, this is not exile, John. Choosing to live means choosing to hide. John says, I'll find a spot. Lau steps out of the car, begins walking to the front steps, but stops and turns around to tell John one more thing. Did you want to hear that joke about that pilot I was cast for? Pulp Fiction.
What?
With Thurman. Like stops midway and's like, do you want to hear that joke? I wouldn't tell you about the ketchup punchline.
Fox Force 5?
Fox Force 5. Anyway, no, that's not what he says. Lau tells him, those men tonight were Japanese. And that's the most I'll tell you. And then Lau smiles and turns around.
He just kind of chills out, takes a stroll.
So John thinks about why, Lau told him that, but then John realizes and kind of, chuckles and drives off. Now, what does that mean, right? Because the film ends with John Wick leaving for where? Now, there was a screenwriter. Forgot to write down the guy's name for these notes. But there's a screenwriter who was talking about how he really loved this Korean film called The Man from Nowhere, and he thought it'd be a cool idea to take John Wick, what he said is, go into like Tokyo, Japan, where he's excommunicado, broke, begging, it's sexy and cool, and he stumbles upon something that has nothing to do with his journey, and he does the right thing. So I thought...
He's Mad Max now.
Yeah, he's Mad Max. So I thought, okay, how about this is John Wick 3 in our little fan fiction idea. This is John Wick 3, and then in John Wick 4 is when he's in Japan.
Yeah.
And he figures he could probably hide out there because these enemies at the high table were Japanese, so maybe Lau was giving a hint that if you're gonna hide, Japan is a place to go. That's near.
Yeah,
Well, I don't know if it's near. I really don't know the geography between China and Japan. But it seems
that's
like
where those dudes were from, and if you maybe want to go there, that's where there is.
Because the high table, he might be implying like the high table probably won't step as much foot on the ground there because they're Japanese.
Who knows,
maybe
man?
I don't know.
John Wick just
We're not the screenwriters. Why do they want to go to Japan?
I mean, John Wick just stepped up a high table mission. I'm interested to see what the repercussions of that are going to be.
Anyway, that's our John Wick 3 Chapter 3 story. You know that we would like to see done. I think it's cool that it starts or it builds up to some action. We won't get to some action until like Act 2. You have like a Die Hard like tribute raid type of action sequence. You know, you get to explore where John Wick goes to China. You get this history. You get like a Chow Yun Fat character in there. I feel like one thing that that the film has, that this story has too, while we might not make it so clear in the plot points, this is kind of a story of John Wick starting off on the path of trying to find a new version of himself.
Yeah.
Because it starts off with him being suicidal, contemplating suicide, but then he's realizing like I don't know exactly what I have to live for, but there's something innate in me.
Yeah, I don't want to die.
You know, the fact that he doesn't kill the child but protects the child kind of reflects a little bit of what this screenwriter was talking about, of where he might want John Wick to go, of like being involved in something that he doesn't have to make a choice on, but he's decided to do the right thing anyway.
Yeah.
So setting him out on this different path of like, he doesn't know what he has to do. He's learning to accept the fact that he has to learn to accept the fact that he's going to be alone. But you know, this part of him does like the killing side. You know, there's a side of him that he has these skills, and he does love that about himself in some way.
Well, and now it's gotten to a point now where he's in so much shit that it seems like a normal life is never kind of going to be on the table anymore, and he's going to take stock.
Yeah.
Of what his options are and what he has at his disposal. It seems like killing follows this guy around. You know, it seems like it's going to be hard for him to ever just stay out of it. So I imagine this will kind of take it and redefine the terms under which John Wick does what he does, you know?
Yeah.
It's like now he's going to basically accept that, yeah, my life is going to involve this until the end, but I'm going to control how I do it now.
Yeah. So John Wick 4, you could go to Japan. John Wick 5, we're talking 30 years down the road. John Wick is an old man and he's a limo driver. And then he's taking care of whoever he took care of in part 4. John Wick finds out he has a daughter that was created out of his DNA. So she's like a little girl with like, she can shoot a lot of things. Yeah.
It's John Wick and his daughter, team.
Yeah, they go on a road trip.
You go on a road trip. Bond.
I'm doing the Logan movie.
I know.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Subscribe to The Real Rejects.
Subscribe.
John's Reasons to Jerry on Twitter and Instagram, social media manager, a Blubbity Blumhouse and The Real Rejects.
Yeah.
And shout out to Keanu Reeves. I hope that one day you can find a role that suits you. You know, he's great in like The Devil's Advocate, Dracula. Like those,
Johnny Mnemonic.
Those were like the films of Keanu Reeves. But ever since like The Matrix and John Wick, I just can't get on board with his style.
And the Bill and Ted stuff, like, what were they thinking?
What were they thinking?
What were they thinking when they cast that guy as that guy?
You have to have a very specific type of depth to play a guy like Ted.
The guy
That's
from
Preston Esquire.
Ted Theodore Logan.
Wait, no, it's Bill as Preston Esquire.